Hey guys, this is Grandmaster Eugene Perelstein, and we're going to cover one of the most annoying setups that we can face here as Black, the London system, and also its cousin, the Jobava London, that Levy Rozman recommends in his video. So the London system is an opening that after d4, knight f6, white can immediately play bishop to f4. Sometimes white starts with a move knight f3, but the ideas are the same. They usually put the pawns on e3, c3, get easy development and castle. And most players who have never faced this opening usually get into trouble with the standard e6, d5 pawn push. So I'm going to recommend to you a different setup, different idea. So after bishop f4, rather than going for the standard setup with these pawns blocking the bishop, I'm going to introduce to you the King's Indian approach, g6. And here again, white can go for the classic e3, c3 London system, or the more recent popular move, the Jobava attack or the Jobava London with this move knight c3. So we'll cover both of these ideas. So first, let's kind of focus on the classics. e3, knight f3, usually we play d6. They usually insert h3 just to get a little room for that bishop, castles. And either they play bishop e2 or c3 right away. It doesn't really matter. Our next move is c5. This is the key setup that I want you to remember. You're never afraid of this endgame, first of all. And second of all, there is a cool idea. If they do this early, with the pawn still being on c2 and this b pawn being vulnerable, this knight h5 is actually giving Black a sizable advantage. Allowing bishop b2 is not good. And after this, first you trade, double the pawns, get the two bishops, and now you get the dream endgame. And this is very uncomfortable for white. Black is clearly better. So this is important little nuance. So most players, though, automatically play c3. This is the main line of the London. Now is the key moment to take advantage of this bishop. Leaving c1 square, this pawn is not protected. Queen b6 is my recommendation. Now, b3 is a huge concession. That leaves this diagonal wide open for us to take advantage of later. Queen c1 is not recommended either. Once the bishop and the knight move, either rook to c8 is going to put lots of pressure. So most players put the queen on b3. This is the main line. We're going to kick the queen, offer the trade. Typically, queen takes, pawn takes. And these double pawns are actually quite strong. They support the center and open up the rook. So most players play a3 so that the pawn is not getting hit. And now in this endgame, it's very important to know how to rearrange your pieces. The bishop actually wants to be on this diagonal. So we were going to start with the move bishop d5. Bishop d7 is okay too. The point is we are getting the bishop to this vital square and get the knight to d7. And I believe this setup is very, very good for Black. White doesn't have the typical e4 push. And if white, let's say, plays natural bishop h2 to get out of any attacks, I love this b5 idea. Notice how all of our pawns are very nicely protected. The point of b5, if they play some, let's say, rook d1, to activate the knight, let's say they play this one, to a4. This is a very unpleasant idea white faces. I don't really see anything else other than playing rook to b1, which is basically paralyzing the rook for the rest of the game. The knight is quite safe. I believe Black is better. The game is still, of course, strategically complex, right? There's lots of pawn breaks that are about to happen in the future, but this is the type of position I prefer to take as Black. So if we were to go back, so after queen b6, I think white doesn't really have a lot of options than to play queen b3 and go into this endgame. What if you encounter a different setup, such as this move knight c3? So the point of knight c3 is basically to meet bishop g7 to e4, which if you play the the modern or the perk, you can play d6, but it's a little passive. So I would recommend you play this move d5. Now, what are the problems in these positions? Well, typically, we don't want to put the pawn on d5. We like our pawn on d6. But white also commits the knight on c3, where typically in the London, the pawn wants to come to c3. So this is kind of a give and take, right? Both sides made some concessions. And typically after e3, bishop g7, a lot of players start hinting at this pawn storm. This is one thing that you should be afraid of, is the pawn storm. And that's why I don't recommend you to castle. This would be a bad idea, castling right into the attack. Instead, answer h4, always with h5, and absolutely no worries whatsoever. You're never going to get checkmated. If they ever play knight f3, the bishop can easily pin the knight. And the bishop e2, this is a very solid move, c6. If you want, you can take the knight at some point, play knight d7. And your general plan is to either, once you trade on e5, f3 to play for e5, or you can play it a little bit cautiously with e6 and start, usually they castle that way to start your pawn storm with b5, b4. So this is what I would recommend. So do you have any questions so far about black setup here?
Not for this one in particular, so this is all good.
Okay, perfect. So these are some of the main ideas. Now, what else can white throw at you? Sometimes after d5, I see people going for this castle plan immediately. This is completely fine for you as well. Black has many different setups. You actually are completely okay to play bishop g7 if you want to. Of course, that allows bishop h6. So if you don't want to waste the tempo on that, you don't have to. You can just start building up your own attack with c6, b5. And you're going to get a double-edged position, because if he tries f3, right, you get this very nice double-edged b4, and his center is destroyed. So this is one possible way. Now, let's say you made a mistake, or you didn't know the London system is about to happen, and you're kind of hoping for some kind of a normal e6, Bogo, or Nimzo positions, and your opponent starts with the move knight f3. You're trying to think, okay, I'm going to play e6, probably London is not going to happen, and then boom, you get faced with the London. Well, guess what? There is no g6 plan anymore, so you have to know the secondary setup. The second that I'm going to introduce you to is called the hedgehog, where you're going to use little pawns as needles to stop white's attack. So we're going to play here. They usually go there. We could already take on d4. You don't have to. You can just continue your development with natural moves. I like to take. And then the key is, if knight c3 ever happens, you already have this nice pin going. So now we just play b6, bishop d3, bishop b7. Again, typically they castle. They typically play h3. This is the beginning of the hedgehog. At some point this happens. So various move orders will pretty much get you to this position. Usually they play a4 with idea a5. We play a6. And the idea is to meet a5 with b5. This is important nuance. And this, guys, is called the hedgehog. You see little pawns like little needles prevent white to get any counterplay in the center. Typically, white, again, drops the bishop. And what is black's plan in this position? Black has a very simple plan. You actually don't mind putting the queen on c7, even though you're walking into this potential x-ray. He can't really take advantage of it. Your plan is to play rook e8, bishop f8, and e5, right? To try to get that two center pawns against one center pawn majority, moving that. And white does not really have any counterplay. It's not easy to generate attacks. The position is balanced with both sides achieving their ideal setups, yet I believe it's easier to be black. If they play something like queen e2, connect the rooks, like I mentioned, rook f e8, if rook f e1, bishop f8, you are getting ready to play e5 at your own convenience. Yeah, so this pretty much sums it all up. This is the hedgehog. Do you have any questions about the hedgehog approach?
Yeah, so is there anything that maybe white can do preemptively to just block this idea that we have? For example, just trying to set up something on C1 and maybe go C4 earlier on.
Earlier on, so let's go back
Yeah.
to see if you can do that. So instead of putting the pawn on C3, you had a good
Yeah.
question. What if they just try
C4,
to
yeah.
grab a lot of space, C4, knight C3, and try to do that? So that's an excellent question. So let's say even here that we can look at the move C4, right? So whenever you see the move C4, that's a sign that we need to think about a timely way to get D5. Right now, D5 I think is premature because we haven't castled. So I would castle. And if knight gets to C3, this is already an opportunity to start thinking about, is it time for D5 or not yet? Why is D5 important in these positions? The point is he has to typically allow the hanging pawns, which is quite weakening, or if he takes, we get this classic IQP structure. IQP is isolated queen pawn, which is a weak pawn. We have a nice outpost in front of it. There's no attacks on h7 because we control g5. He doesn't really have any knight g5 ideas. And these are the kind of moves you constantly have to be aware of. So I think even in this position, d5 may be an interesting try. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, so if he tries to gain space, we try to hit him with d5. So I think in a nutshell, that is the main idea. I want to show you one other cool idea if you want a little bit more fighting chess, let's say. So let's go back. So in this position, you can actually play the move b6, keeping your options open. And after the move e3, bishop b7, let's say they play knight b2. If they forget to play this move h3, you get this really awesome idea, knight h5. A lot of people don't really understand why knight h5 is such a powerful move, but the problem for white is you actually don't have to take and open the file. You can just play slowly with d6, a6, and knight can go to d7. The problem for white is whenever they castle, you can just take, and black gets the bishop pair advantage, and it's not easy for white to generate any play at all against the h7 pawn. So this knight h5 is very, very cool. As a matter of fact, you can even set up knight h5 as way back here. So sometimes you see this move played bishop f4. You can play, again, if you don't like the fianchetto with g6, bishop g7, you can play b6, e3, bishop b7, and a lot of people play knight f3 here. You can immediately play knight h5. The bishop is stuck. If bishop e5, d6, this, 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 this. And the thing about this position is that white has this move knight fd2, hitting our own knight. We have a really cool reply to that. If we were to lose the knight, we might as well ruin his structure. This is a star move of this line, knight f4, hitting g2, and after e takes f, we take the bishop with a very unorthodox position. Two sets of double pawns, but h3 is a big threat. We have nice pressure, and this guy can just get developed. White is also in trouble here. So this position is very rich, and black has more options. So that pretty much covers how to play against the London with various setups, including the King's Indian, including the hedgehog, and including this early b6 fianchetto going with knight h5. And I also showed you how to handle this knight c3 Jobava attack ideas.
Hey, check this video out to make sure that you get more important information to bring your chess to the next level.